Good evening, 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 and welcome to another stream. I was watching one of my old videos a couple of days ago, the old dungeon series. Someone helped me organize it all into a proper playlist of itself. You guys might have seen I tweeted about it. And I saw one of my old videos from way back then. I opened the video doing that QI intro, and I was like, oh, I like me. That was great. Anyway, hello everybody, welcome to another stream. Got some talky talk to do about an event we just ran. First of all, I want to say, last week, okay, there's, what you're seeing on screen right now, the potato and the Ultra Spud thing, right? Like, you may have noticed for a long time there have been no Ultra Spuds. No one's really been donating or doing anything. And that's fine, like, I'm not the kind of person that would pick at something like that. However, there's a little tool that I'm supposed to run while I stream that automatically updates that when it detects that stuff's come in. And it turns out on one of the Nightfall streams, I believe it was, that we did, I had a donation from Nerva Cat for 29 quid! My god! It's a weird number. I think it's probably because it's been automatically moved from dollars, maybe, or something. Anyway, Nerva Cat, I don't know if you're here, alright, but I really appreciate that, and I just want, I noticed that last night, and I was like, oh, I've got to sort this out. So thank you very, very, very much. It was really bad luck, basically, that little tool wasn't on there at the time. But there you go, and you get your even if you don't see it right now, you get your screen space anyway. So yeah. A few things to talk about. So, I left you off last stream talking about how we were going to run a little event. First of all, I want to give major props and massive thanks to Twicky, one of our games masters, who took control of this one and has started the Spud Club doing these cool things. A little bit of a recap for you guys. I'm an obsessive man that wants to meticulously catalogue everything about Guild Wars 2 for my channel. Just as I did for Guild Wars 1, and so I talked to you guys about this kind of lofty idea of, hey, maybe I could go back to that Let's Play idea. Nobody's asking for a Let's Play, but it would be something fun for me, and at the end of the day, that's what YouTube's supposed to be all about, right? And I talked about doing a complimentary series for the Let's Play, showing map completion for all the maps in the game. So, like, because there's two halves to this game, and it would they wouldn't even necessarily be videos with commentary. They'd just be like super sexy, immersive, reshade, ICM, beautiful videos. And I mentioned that what would be even better were I to execute such a series would be, what if there were a bunch of people running around on the map like it was launched, like there was all this initial activity going on? Wouldn't that be freaking awesome? And so we actually got the ball rolling on it. And so Twicky took control of it and decided, all right, yeah, look, as a guild, we'll do it. We'll go for it. So, I did a video last week announcing it to people. I had a video up on Wood and Potatoes 2 while it was going live. Some people complained that maybe I should have had it on Wood and Potatoes 1, but I don't know. I feel like your average Guild Wars 2 player has absolutely no understanding of why we're doing this. No understanding whatsoever. And it just wouldn't appeal to them. So, I don't know. Wood and Potatoes is there for these kind of cool things, right? Wood and Potatoes 2, sorry, is there for that. So, yeah, put it up, I tweeted it, and we just did the event. So, I did not stream the event, okay, for two reasons. First is a less important reason, but it is one, and that's that I wanted to be able to relax, and I wanted to be able to read the text, and I wanted to be able to truly immerse myself back into that original experience of the game. So, it's the anniversary of Guild Wars 2 as well at the moment, and so it's kind of this cool thing, let's go back, right? Like Queensdale, for I think a lot of players who started with humans, which is the majority of the community. We kind of think of these are our earliest moments of the game. It's kind of cool to reflect back right now at the anniversary to those early moments of the game. And I wanted to immerse myself. I wanted to play at my own pace instead of looking at chat all the time and potentially fucking up the footage with commentary, blah, 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 blah. So that was reason one. Reason number two was because I knew if I was streaming while we were doing it, people would zerg around me. And that's really not the point. The point was to sort of show an authentic experience of what Guild Wars 2 is like, to run around in the maps as a player and level, and, you know, for prospective buyers of the game, and for sort of a time capsule for 10 years in the future. You know, because I'm getting to the point now, right, like, where I'm in my mid-20s, and I remember playing certain games on Xbox Live and on PC that are now complete wastelands, dead. And not only are they wastelands and dead, there's really no way you could go online to see what these experiences once were, right? Nowhere. And I feel like that's a big shame. Like, that's a really sucky thing. And so I kind of want that for Guild Wars, right? Like, I get it. YouTube itself might not be eternal, but it feels pretty good at the moment, pretty robust. And I'm sure I have plenty of opportunities in the future to download all the stuff as archives. So anyway, I wanted that. I wanted to capture that. And me running around in a giant Zerg, because everyone knows where my current location is at all times, because I guess I'm streaming, and because people might come into the stream without really understanding all these nuanced little twatty things that I'm talking about here. You know, it can ruin it a little bit, so I didn't stream. I'm wondering if that's a mistake, though, even though those two reasons are in place there. I'm wondering if it was a mistake, because I feel like if I did stream it, people would feel that connection a bit more. Like, loads... Okay, so let's talk about how this went. Loads of you turned out. It wasn't quite as far as I was hoping. I wanted to start it off with that beautiful, you know, the house full of people everywhere, and it... You know, to really feel like there were 150 of us around. I don't think we hit 150, but a lot of people came. A lot of people came. And what was even better, a shit ton of you guys were typing in map chat like mad. The map chat, guys, was awesome. So basically, everyone just sort of came along and they got involved and they played with it. I didn't type in map chat at all. I was appearing offline the entire time. Nobody even knew the character name that I was playing on, as far as I'm aware. But map chat was awesome, and I got that all in the footage, guys. I've got all of you joking about, oh, I want to get a green. I've got all of you joking about all kinds of stuff. Just people the entire time were talking. Well, for most of the time. For the first, like, 3 hours, people were talking loads. And it was great. It was great. And I just want to say, if we ever do this again, to those of you who are there that were getting involved with it, that were having fun with it, asking what these features were that you probably knew, you know, saying, oh, is this a WoW killer? Or, you know, stuff like that, right? Like, the original launch kind of comments for fun. It was awesome. And I have to say, that's probably the highlight of the whole thing. You guys did awesome. And it was a lot of fun. And it was really cool, yeah, to run around in it. For the first 2 hours or so, it really did feel like there was a lot of activity in Queensdale. It really did feel like a lot of people were going on. And they were hanging out in different areas. And nobody, like, realized it was me and stuck to me in a weird way or whatever. It was just good, right? It was just exploring this video that I've made now. This video that most people in the world won't care about. This video that is really long and has no commentary and is just running around mapping Queensdale. To me, is an awesome video. So, I wanted to say thanks for that, guys. So, there's a lot to talk about. Okay, so that's sort of how the event went. My experience with the event was this, right? I logged in. The house had quite a few people in it. It was night time. I went out. I spoke to the scout. I spoke to all the different NPCs in the house. Let's go do this. This is what I did. I went to, and one of the NPCs here in this house at the start of the event, okay. There were, like, people dotted around on the bridges and stuff here. There were loads of people. There were, like, 3 people talking to the scout when I came out, all with the icon over their head. It was awesome. But one of the NPCs, I believe it's this one, the Priest of Dwayne, right, talks about where all the priests are. And you can say, where are the other priests? And they say where they all are, but they don't mention Grenth. And you can say, what about Grenth? And he says, of course, I believe there is a priest near Shaymor's graveyard. I've blah, 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 blah. So guess what? It was nighttime. So I go, I see the priest. I talk to the guy. It all feels really perfect. There's even an event that triggers that. I never got to play it, but there's an event. I go into the little bandit place. I spy in at the deeper areas, though. How can you do it? I look at the door and hear the people whispering behind the door and running off. I come back out. The sun starts to rise. It's all awesome. I've spoken to all these NPCs. I've had this phenomenal experience, like this really, really cool, nostalgic experience, and I really do mean that, right? And I came into this house here,
Ready to rock.
and this is maybe half an hour in, all right, already, okay? Like, I'd taken my time with it. I'd played it properly, like, really played the game. And I'm stood here at this bar, and the game crashes. And the game doesn't just crash, guys. My entire PC, for whatever reason, crashes. It dies completely. I have no idea why. I've actually been testing some reshade stuff on the side, and it's been crashing too. But I'm not even running that client at the moment, so I've got no idea what happened. My entire PC died. And not only did my entire PC die, but then when I reload and I log back in, all the footage I'd gathered, the first half an hour of footage I'd gathered was just dead, corrupted, not working. So I felt really bad. That was awful. That was awful. That was horrible. Because now it was day and it was a gig of the nighttime thing, blah, 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 blah. And so then when I came into the house, so I obviously redid it. I came back and I was like, fine, we'll redo it. And now the magic was gone, right? And now I was talking to these guys, but it was obligatory. And I wasn't really getting... Oh, that's a big message. Oh my god! SCX? Didn't get to sub for a whole 12 months? Oh, I missed most of your message, SCX. Hold on. Dude, I feel bad. That's a huge donation you just gave me, but you're not going to usurp Nirvana Cat. Oh, sorry, Nerva Cat. Oh my gosh. Hold on here. Didn't get to stop for the whole 12 months, but still want to support my favourite potato. Buy something nice for yourself. Thank you so much, SX. I will put that to the side. I'll basically live on that. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. That's awesome, dude. So yeah, now I was doing it and it was obligatory, and now it was like different, and it wasn't so fun, but I did it. I tried to go slow pace, and what really pained me was this you're seeing here, this spud guy and blah blah blah. This wasn't happening anymore. There wasn't really any. There were like 2 people in the house, maybe tops. No one was talking to the scouts, so I'd lost like that beautiful intro we could have had. There's no fault to the event runners, by the way, because I told Twicky when I crashed out, I said, oh my god, my PC's crashed. And they said, oh, do you want to come back into the house? We can get everybody back, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't want to impose on people in that way, so I didn't. So yeah, it felt a bit worse. But then once I got back to the... And, you know, I was playing it slow, guys. I was playing it, like, looking at my weapon skills. Like, oh, what does this do kind of thing. And, like, you know, not dodge rolling. And I wasn't using mobility skills to zoom me around all the map the whole time. And then I got out to the bridge, and then things got really good again, actually. Really, really good. I actually got a couple of very rare events I very rarely, if ever, in my entire life played. Such as an event that spawns here on this bridge. Tell me, guys, in chat. This might be just novel and basic information to you. But how many of you have not ever seen... Not if you have, alright, that won't tell us anything. Put a 1 in chat right now, live. Put a 1 in chat if you've never seen an event on this bridge. I want to see how many there are of you out there. Because I knew about an event on this bridge, but I only knew about this event from the alphas and the Gamescom demos. Right? That's where I knew about it from. And I hadn't seen it for years. Because it's not a fast rolling event. And if it is, this is such a big 3-fair, people blow it up very quickly. There you go. Look at the 1 spam. There's an event here, guys. There's an event. Some bandits come here, and then they build some barriers on the bridge. And you have to... Oh my god, that's an insane amount of ones. And guess what happens as I'm doing this immersive freaking tour, alright? Like, I come through, and they build the... And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I'll do it. And a ranger helped me kill it. Another thing that I got some really excellent footage of. By the way, I have to say, while I was recording all of this now, I'm scared that my PC's going to crash. It didn't again a second time, so don't worry about that. But yeah, I come here, and I see the centaurs talking to the guard, and I get to capture a bit of that. And I remember these from early versions of the game, where you had, like, skill books and stuff. I explore this place, and just as I leave out of the door, I get, like, this perfect shot looking back at the garrison as all these centaurs attack. And they lift all these windows up. These windows come up. It's an animation I'd never seen before. I've done this event before. But these windows come up. And I never noticed that these catapults on the top, you can actually be used in the event. So I was on my warrior and I came up here. And you can fire these at the centaurs as they attack. And I got this good footage of like the trebs and destroying the enemy trebs as they were assaulting. And then I saw this beautiful animation of this door getting weakened, and finally it breaks through, and then they all attack in here. And then you clear them out. And then this goes on, and then the armory guys event seamlessly starts, where he refers to the attack that just happened. It was great. It was really, really, really good. And then I hang out here for a while. We do the armory event. I go to the Windmill King over here. You know, most veteran players, they lose the magic. They lose the flavor and the fun that was there once upon a time. So the Windmill King is surrounded by all these different environmental weapons, right? And any veteran player knows that you don't need to fuck about with those. Just kill the Windmill King and move on, right? Because all we care about is reward, reward, reward. Gimme, 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 gimme. And we just zerg away, right? And like that magic is gone. But you know, I played into it, and I came up here, and I had screen shake on, by the way. I have super classic looting on as well. So not just everything's getting hoovered into my inventory. You won't believe the flavour you lose in the game having all your loot hoovered into your inventory. I mean, I know it sounds stupid of me, but like, there's little sound effects associated with this stuff. You can get gold that you claim in the right, and it's got a little gold sound effect you'll never hear again if you don't have it right. You know, it really felt very launchy. But yeah, so I came over here, and I was throwing stuff. I did the event with the bees later on, and I was throwing bees at people, and I bought the bandit bomb, and I was dropping that and killing enemies with that. You know, just really experiencing the game as best I could. And so basically what happened was when I got around here to the trading post, everyone in chat's been exploding the entire time, right? Like, guys, if anything, if we do this event again, you have to type that much again. That was so awesome, right? Like, all that chat was brilliant. And the faster the better, right? Like, if chat is just rolling fast and it's everyone really talking, that's awesome. But around when I'm here, everybody starts saying, oh my god, what is that in the swamp? And I realise SB's up. And I'm only around level 8, alright? So I'm pretty underleveled for Shadow Behemoth, who's level 15. But I think, fuck it. I was going to do this event. I was literally going to trigger this event here, but I thought, fuck it. So I wander down this road here, and I go to Shadow Behemoth. And now there's a huge Zerg of us, right? For those that didn't participate in the event, you're really going to want to hear this, right? There's a huge Zerg of us. Everyone's typing about it. Everyone's pretending like it's the first time they've ever seen SB. They're talking about this ghost boss. They're talking about how it needs to get nerfed. They're asking if other people have ever killed it before. They're asking like what the story implications of it and stuff are. And what's fascinating about it is we've got a dick ton of people in this map, right, guys? And all of them are on characters that are like an hour, 2 hours old tops. And they're presumably, to a lesser or greater extent, they've been playing the same kind of game that I've been playing, which is they've not been rushing. And so we're all here, probably less than level 15, okay? There'll be a couple of people who came on the level 8 characters. I saw a few people doing that, which was a bit disappointing, but still. And what did this mean? This meant that the Shadow Behemoth was just so difficult to kill, like tanky. Alright, so like it revealed these interesting things in the design of the Shadow Behemoth, in that like he's really not a threat, right? Like I was wandering around there level 8, any of these things could have one-shot me, but there's so few mobs and they attack so slowly and his tails are so obvious and blah 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 that you know, every now and then people would get downed, and there were a couple of moments where big chunks of us would all get put into the down state kind of thing. But generally, and I did die, I got defeated at one point and I had to run back. But generally, the scaling, all it did was it just made him super tanky. And don't forget, he's on a time limit these days. An enraged timer, if you will, where he's going to go away if you don't kill him in, what is it, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? And so it was fascinating. Right? I have not seen the Shadow Behemoth, a Zerg, fail to kill the Shadow Behemoth since maybe my first time ever playing it, which was a long time ago. Okay? And, it was quite amazing that we barely even got him to half health. And then it felt a bit weird because then he disappeared. And have you guys ever seen the enraged timer fail on a Shadow Behemoth? Just so that you know, like if you're solo, it's scaled to the point where any level 80 can do ridiculous damage to it and kill it on their own. So it's so rare to see that happen. And so the weird thing is that they haven't even like coded for that contingency, and maybe we can't blame them for that. But like it plays the victory music, and there's no discernible reason for him to go away. He just goes away. And the only difference, I think, is that all the mobs in the area stay alive instead of dying with him. And so you had all these like really ridiculous, dangerous things killing these players. But then it was great, guys. The footage of that moment is awesome, right? It's buried in this huge fucking video, but it's awesome because there's all this local chat exploding as well as map chat. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And in a lot of ways, I felt like I should have stopped the video there. Because I feel like that's sort of when it peaked for me. It peaked at that point. I feel like after that point, maybe a lot of people went away. Again, this is the thing. I didn't stream it. And I feel like people come to this event and you guys are awesome. You want to support Wood and Potatoes and you want to be a part. You don't get to interact with me. You don't get to see any of my reactions. You don't get to. I'm not like I'm a ghost, right? You don't even know if I'm there. Well, and after the Shadow Behemoth, people started being like, I wonder if WP's still on the map. Blah blah blah. Someone party invited me twice, I think, just to check if I was online because there was just no way to get in contact with me. And I wonder if that's why at that point the event peaked when it could have kept going. Now, I don't say that everybody left. It kept going. It definitely did. It's just that then we were all a lot more spread out, I think, from just the starting areas and the Shadow Behemoth. And so I went back to my goal of basically just trying to play the map really nicely. But it's weird. It was like after this first moment of waypointing, this first moment of rushing, this first moment of, okay, what am I doing next? All right, it's map completion. That was the moment, right, that I could feel my experience of the game shift. Alright, so what do I mean by this? Alright, everything I described before the Shadow Behemoth, right? Exploring for exploration's sake, speaking to all the NPCs, really getting wrapped up in this new world that you're in, right? That game, the game that I'm playing here, the game that I'm playing when I'm wandering around in Shaymore and pulling off the, you know, the white mantle thing and learning about the priests and finding the little kids and looking at the getting lost in the windmill. That's what I did, right? I got lost in this windmill over here. That game is not the game I've been playing for the past 3 years, 9 months. That game goes away very quickly. It's certainly not the game I played when Heart of Thorns came out, and I was exploring those new maps for the first time. Because those new maps, they didn't have... There's a real dense layering of things to find and find wonderment in early Queensdale that I feel like you don't find many other places. Certainly not in the new content they've put in the game. Because the new stuff, you're always thinking about the game you're playing now, right? Like as a veteran, this isn't necessarily... So I did this as well with the bear harassing the girl, trying to steal her picnic basket, and then you kill it, and then she comes back, and so on. It's funny because, you know, so much of my motivation of playing is based on collections and rewards and the metas and stuff. It's a fundamentally different experience. And it was really crazy to see how honestly fatigued I got doing this, right? This took me 4 hours. 4 hours to map complete Queensdale. Now, in some ways, that's really exciting and really cool. But, because, you know, oh my god, 4 hours for this, and then there's all these other maps. It really makes you feel like the potential that Guild Wars 2 had, right? But there is something about the way that the content is delivered to you that it just immediately becomes very lacking, right? And to me, I feel like the lacking is map completion, doing these hearts after a while and just fighting for the sake of getting to new POIs and fighting for the sake of getting access to the skill challenges or fighting for the skill challenge just to get this 100%. As soon as you transition into that mode, which for me was after the expiration of about this and then this little moment here, as soon as that moment's hit you, I feel like the game changes. I feel like you lose a lot of joy. A lot of joy. And I find it funny as well because, you know, one of the things I was really enjoying about this was... and one of the reasons I want to produce this as content was because what I always get really nostalgic about and remember looking back at and loving were the old convention demos people used to play and where they'd record it. People like Wartower would record this stuff. And those were so magical and gorgeous and extremely cool to look at. Because when you look at the game in that bite-sized 40-minute window... it succeeds on so many fronts, right? But then, and that's where I think Guild Wars 2 has gone wrong. Okay, I haven't been very clear. I think the two things that it misses after that 40 minutes is you're not really playing an RPG. In my opinion, you're not. This bar going up here, right? This is not a mechanic. This is not something for joy in Guild Wars 2. Leveling in RPGs can be fun. In Guild Wars 2, no, it's not, right? Like, people might say, oh, I love the leveling experience in Guild Wars 2. But what they're talking about when they say stuff like that is they're comparing that experience to other MMOs and the freedom you have in Guild Wars 2 compared to what other MMOs offer and the freedom you have in the reduced grind, in the fact you're not kill stealing, in the fact that the world is pretty large and interesting, right? Like, as I've explained here. But when they're not actually talking about the leveling itself, right? Like, this is not a good RPG. I've said it a million times before. It's not, because all this bar is being viewed as is a way to guide you to content. That's it. All this bar is doing is saying, okay, you can explore here, and you can explore here if you like, and you can explore here, here, and here. But you're not allowed to explore here yet. You haven't played for an arbitrary amount of time yet, right? Like, they've stripped all understanding of what makes an RPG a good RPG away. And I think there are some really fundamental basic things Guild Wars 2 should do differently that would make this kind of stuff more fun. Make, like, gearing yourself feel more fun. Like, as I was exploring all this weapons and things and armor and trinkets I was getting, it all felt so unrewarding because we all know you never have to upgrade any of your gear in Guild Wars 2 because they've diminished the mechanic to a point where it's not necessary because they give you so many... attributes on level up instead. I've always been in favor of a system where you don't get attributes on level up, you just get levels, and levels are what gives you access to new gear, right? So people always have these awesome moments where they feel like that new hammer they just picked up with the new skin on it really is the thing that's given them the more damage. I would prefer to see all of it loaded in that way. Anyway, this is all different discussions. But today was really fascinating for me because today encapsulated that experience of how Guild Wars 2 shifts. It shifts from this thing of and at the moment where it shifts will be different for everyone. From exploration and wide-eyed joy and enthusiasm to, oh, I'm just map completing and I'm just killing stuff and oh god, all of the hearts feel the same and oh, blah 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 blah. So yeah, I was fatigued as hell by the end. I was fatigued as hell. I was trying so hard to resist rushing fast. I could feel the veteran stuff in my veins, right? Like I was like, oh my god, I gotta go quite faster. Come on, use great sword 3, then 5, then swap to sword, then use sword 2, then swap back to the great sword for the great sword 3. Make sure you put a signal on that lets you move faster. Make sure you like all this crap, right? And I'm like, no, stop, slow down, try to slow down. But it became so hard to slow down because it got so thin on the ground, and I don't know what to think about that. But I had like a real struggle as well, because one of the reasons I wanted to do this, okay, one of the first and foremost reasons we ran this event was because I wanted some content, right, where I have done this encyclopedic demonstration, an example of the game, right? So I've got it under my wing. Okay, this is map completion. There you go, a full series, map completion right there. But I found myself while I was doing Queensdale, I was like, I don't want to do 100%. 100% is going to take so long, and I'm bored at the prospect of going to these ends here and clicking a random thing in the dialogue and waiting and kill them. And then I'm bored of the prospect of coming and, like, God's Lost Swamp is slow. This heart is slow, and I understand why it's slow. It's supposed to keep people nearby for the chance of the world boss. Maybe it's archaic design, it doesn't need to be there anymore, but I understand it. You know, I was like, oh, look, why don't I just make the series showing generally off the map? And then but then I got to, and that's honestly what I was going to do. I was going to leave it at Beetleton, talk to a couple of NPCs up there, and then be done. Showing off as many cool things as I could, like walking through this pipe, which is badass. And but when I got there, I was like, all right. I looked and I had 93% done on the map. So I had to do this heart is slow as balls. I had to do that, this heart, and then I needed like 2 POIs at the end, plus this vista over here. And that was it. And then so the video is 100% map completion Queensdale. Whether... but most of the fun came up here, though, right? And it was for the nostalgia and the... maybe nostalgia is the only thing that held that up as a veteran player. I don't know. So I don't know whether I can do that as a concept every week for every map in the game. I'm not saying no to it. I'm saying we're going to have a discussion with Twicky and the other games masters about whether we'll run this event again, guys. I think now that the anniversary's gone, even fewer people will understand why the fuck we're doing this and what's fun about it, and even fewer people will have the capacity to understand that there is a different game out there to the one they're currently playing, right? Because, and I really stand by that. That we just did is not the regular Guild Wars 2, and it's crazy to go back and see that. And I wonder whether ArenaNet appreciate that. I wonder whether they, really appreciate how different that product feels. And maybe this is why so many people, so many, launch players who fucking left, and then they returned after 3 years for Heart of Thorns to go to Verdant Brink, Auric Basin, and Tangled Depths, why they didn't feel like these offered this, right? And I wonder whether ArenaNet are going to factor that in when they're looking at, Lake Doric, and oh my god, that's a huge moth. Jesus Christ. I wonder whether they're going to factor that in. I don't know how the moths are getting in my house, man. Like, I've got all the windows and everything boarded up, and they're still managing to make it in. Jesus Christ, I hate moths. Oh, it's right near me. Oh my god. We're going to have to do something about that in a second. I need a cup or something. But yeah, so there you go. That was the event. Twiggy says, I dare you to let this fall. I have great ideas for the next maps. Oh, really? Okay. All right. Should they add into these early maps big meta events like in newer maps? Even if they are easier ones? Well, one concept, this was not a serious thought of mine, but one concept I did have while I was running around in this event, in this map, I kind of did Shadow Behemoth and then sort of found myself roaming around near the other meta. There's 2 metas. In a lot of these early maps, there's 2 metas. Often one of them, you're lucky if one of them triggers a world boss, basically, right? And then that means that it actually becomes something people play at endgame. And the other one tends to be just dead forever. Now, the alternate meta event in Queensdale is actually really interesting. It's located here, and it's to do with the push-pull of Centaurs versus Beetleton. And I seem to remember early interviews suggesting Beetleton itself would be attacked. That's why part of the heart quest here is the idea that there's Centaur graffiti there, suggesting the Centaurs can actually get in, and that there was going to be some kind of assault, and this was the big meta here. But obviously this is just dead. I kind of had a weird... It struck me that a concept that the devs could do, if they ever cared to go back to this, but I don't know whether they do. Again, because it's always, do they do this or something else? But would be like to tie the 2 together. That could be a fun way of doing it. Like, the pre for the Shadow Behemoth right now is just blow up some portals in varying areas, right? Like, there's one here, And then, where's the other one? Isn't there one here or something? Anyway, there's 3 portals, and then you should go. What if this meta became the pre for this meta, right? That would be an interesting way of doing it. Very similar to the structure in Southside Cove, where the pre is actually a big part, right? Before the boss itself spawns. And then maybe you could take that concept in other maps too. So the 2 metas in Kessex are, you've got the Bandit meta over here, and then you've got the Draethor meta over here. So you could have I don't know, you could have both of these metas trigger at the same time. I don't know. Maybe they like the design of metas just there in the early level maps as well. I don't know. It's difficult. Take far more speculation than what I'm just talking about here. And then they trigger like some final thing, right? Like, what would be the idea? I can tell you that what you're talking about between the core of Tyrion and Heart of Thorns is one of the reasons my wife didn't enjoy Heart of Thorns. Yeah, like, I don't think you can... I think there's a bit of a misattribution here. The community has done it on a great many occasions, right? They've realized there's a problem with the game, and they haven't realized what the problem is, right? Like, one of the first times I really struck that chord showing the community this issue was once upon a time during Season 1 of The Living World. I was doing a Q&A, just any old Q&A, right? And I answered like 6 or 7 questions. And I realized one of the questions I did was actually hitting a really, really important nail, and it was to do with Scarlet Briar. And I made the point that, you know, people weren't happy with Season 1 of The Living World, right? They weren't happy. The story wasn't doing it for them. The narrative wasn't being delivered well enough. Oh, the other thing I wasn't doing here was I wasn't gliding and stuff. I was trying to make it feel as authentic as possible. And everyone was doling that out on Scarlet. The community, you could feel the community didn't like Season 1. You could feel that in terms of story, Season 1 wasn't doing it, right? And you could feel it there, and all anyone on the forums, all anyone on Reddit, all anyone in my video comments could say was, oh, Scarlet sucks. I wish we had a better villain. Scarlet, Scarlet, Scarlet. And I just realized, you know, people were just getting this wrong. Yes, there's a problem, but it's not Scarlet. And I did a video of this one question. I just put it into its own video. And the video is called Scarlet Briar's a Scapegoat, I think is what I called it. Because that's what she was. She was the scapegoat for the real issues. And I sat down and I said, look, Scarlet's not the best, right? She's got this, and this problems, but this is the real issue you have in here. And I threw that video out, and that struck a few chords with a few people. This kind of stuff happens a lot, and I think it happens with Heart of Thorns as well. People blame the meta events, right? They blame... the ArenaNet's design of meta events and just events in general in the jungle is actually really good, guys. For story, the fact that they do it as a floating timeline, but they also cut corners, right? And they cut corners that they were so scared to cut back at launch that they really should have been cutting at launch. And it's fine, okay? So, like, for example, I'll show you one of the corners they cut, hopefully, straight away. How the hell do I get... Here we go, there we go. The point I'm trying to make to you right now is that the Heart of Thorns events and meta events are not poorly designed. Okay, and I've got 2 specific points for you here. We're going to have to stall just for a second as I run over. So, yeah, here you go, here you go, here you go. This is it, this is it. Okay, so this Chuck Eggs event, right? Just an event. It's a part of a meta, whatever, right? That's not the relevant thing right now. This is just an event. This is a collection event, as we would find with any in Corteria, except obviously it's a bit more evolved because they've got the bonus objectives that they're actually rolling with. Very few events in Corteria had the bonus objective system in there. Many players don't even know what the bonus objective system is. That's where you can do the priority goal for an event, and then there's also a bonus thing that you can do here too. Come on, I've got to get down there quick. These guys are probably going to kill me as I go. There, I was trying to reflect to save my life. It was probably a bad idea. I've got 7 seconds. Come on, come on, come on, come on. So, Nocta's down here, okay? Here he is. So, the event just ended. I didn't get gold. This is where gold would trigger. Now, what's happening here, okay, is they need Nocta to get to the location of another event, alright? Which is going to happen down in the lane in a second. Now, in Corteria, what they would do is they would have these long gaps, right? And they would have this really prohibitive design in there where they tried to make these NPCs move as immersively and perfectly as possible in Corteria, right? In Heart of Thorns, they've realized they can take shortcuts, and they're fine with it, okay? So if you watch Nocta here, he's running towards where the event was a second ago. All the players have moved on and preempted him because they know where the next event spawns. So they don't really care. But what Nocta really has to do is he has to go back that way, back where those players are, and he has to walk down this long path, this winding hallway, blah, 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 until finally he gets down into the lane. But what this NPC is going to do, we all know NPCs don't handle well with ledges and jumping and stuff like that.
Once we have soft, there's a magic flow coming into the nest. The bugs like the local magic so much that they store it. Maybe they need it. Meet me below.
Meet me below? They just fucking vanish him, right? They just make him disappear and they spawn him down there, alright? Now, some people, sure, some players will take issue with that. Some players will be like, oh, that's not enough, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, right, though, because this opens so many more doors, alleviates so many more concerns that they may have had in the map design. You know, when they're designing an event like this and they have this obstacle of this cliff, back at launch, that would have sparked huge discussions and changes in the environment and all kinds of crap, right? It would have, you know, triggered this whole chain down, but in Heart of Thorns, they're a little bit more comfortable to make, this is just one example of a shortcut. And the events themselves tend to be a lot smarter, a lot more interesting. Take, for example, a classic idea of an event in Corteria, right? The idea that something's on fire and you've got to put it out, right? That happens all over the game. Heart of Thorns, they take that concept and guess what? They've made it way better. It's far smarter now. This can trigger this exact same idea in Jacket Itzel. It would have been too lucky for us to have had it here. The Wyvern will come here at one point. It will burn this place down. And what you'll have is instead of little shitty things that you just press F and a random magic bucket comes out of nowhere and pause on stuff, you actually find the buckets in the areas, you throw them ground targeted, and now they've got this, the AoEs can be big and smaller, and the actual fire will shrink. It won't just disappear as a toggle on and off, it will shrink, it will shrink, it will shrink, it will shrink until eventually it goes away. A lot of the events are really smart, and they're designed well, and they chain together better as well. At the launch of Guild Wars 2, they have a really nice chaining event. It's in Lorna's Pass. It triggers down here at the False Lake, and it revolves around an artifact, a dwarven artifact, or a bunch of dwarven artifacts that I believe the Order of Whispers recover from the bottom of the lake. And so it's this one here, the Dwarven Artifacts. Now this event, right, if I finish that, eventually it will change into another event where we come up to this house, and then if we fail an event to defend this house, we can have a big boss fight here. If we succeed, it will change into another escort to have another event down here, and then you have an even bigger boss fight down here. None of this is a meta event. None of this is obvious that it's happening. One of the big videos from Guild Wars 2's early days was somebody pointing out that there's this really cool event, but people at Corteria missed this shit. Heart of Thorns doesn't fall into this problem. Why doesn't it fall into this problem? Because they weren't scared to make that a meta, to make it obvious, to make it clear to players through dialogue, through having quick, snappier transitions between events that stuff's going on. Heart of Thorns events are better than Corteria. They are more numerous, they are better designed, they flow together better, they tie into narratives of maps better, they have more presence in the world, right? Like, I have a real story I can talk about with Lord Farron coming up here, and that's a chapter in his life, blah, blah, blah. You can't do that with any of the random fucking nobody NPCs that happen in any of the Corteria events. Heart of Thorns does events well. It identifies that one of the most fun things about Guild Wars 2 is a load of different people from different areas of a map coming together to fight a massive boss like the Shadow Behemoth, and it's your first time experiencing it and it blows your mind, right? And you naturally get led into those in great ways in Heart of Thorns, right? And yet, what do the devs get once Heart of Thorns comes out? They get a million people nattering away in their ears that the problem with the meta events, with the new maps, and the problem with their expansion is the metas. That's a pretty fucking hard thing to swallow, don't you think? That's a pretty tough thing to decipher as a developer, where the community feedback is actually being worthwhile. And do I think that people are being particularly worthwhile when they say, oh, the meta events are bad? No, I don't. I don't think they're being worthwhile. I think the problems with Heart of Thorns, I think the reason that this doesn't feel the same as this is far more nuanced than that. I think that it comes much more down to the audience perception of what it is they feel rewarded by when they're here, compared to when they're here. I think it could be the amount of depth that's there in terms of the amount of NPCs you can talk to. I think it could be the lack of other worthwhile content delivery systems like traditional questing, and like the fact that, especially when you get to level 80, the idea of progression and stuff is a bit hard. Well, no, I don't know, getting your elite specs feels pretty good. I don't know, I just don't think that the whole problem with Heart of Thorns was the design of those events. I think it's more that people feel like they're always regimented, and they're always on timers, that the maps aren't worth playing unless they're doing the metas. I feel like it's these perceptions that hurt the maps. And I feel like it's the lack of slower paced maps that hurts the expansion. And I tell you what, I think the number one problem with the expansion, of everything about the expansion, the number one problem is that there is not enough of it, okay? The fact that Fireheart Rise has, you know, a shitty meta that might bug, blah, 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 that you have to do and feel schedule or whatever, never became a massive issue for the core of the game. Why? Because it was not a huge part of the core of the game. Heart of Thorns has its biggest problem is that there's not much for players to look at. So they will pick at very little, or what little they have, right? Like, when this is a third of your content, because let's be real, Dragon's Stand isn't a real map in many respects. When this is a third of your content, people are going to scrutinize the shit out of it, right? Keswick's Hills is not a third of Corteria. And I feel like that compounds any negativity and upset people have with Heart of Thorns. It's a huge topic. But, you know, if they can get an expansion, I guess, right? Like, what do I want? If they can get an expansion that can make me feel like this did, alright? When the game first came out and when you sort of played into it a second ago here. If they can get an expansion that makes this, you know, through all of this, I'll be a happy chappy. And you can mix in some of this. You totally can. So Pokey3 says, that said, did your idea of having a big, pretty empty map like the Crystal Desert without much events change after today's experience? That's a really good question. I do maintain that my dream MMO is not scared to have oh. I'm not a smart enough man to answer that question, because look, I see the value in an idea like that. I see the value in an MMO that appreciates why Shadow of the Colossus exploration was good, and appreciates why Journey exploration was good, and appreciates why some of these indie games that can't afford to have, you know, rich content depth or whatever was good. Like I would love an MMO that appreciated that and wasn't scared to give you those experiences, you know, these truly vast open plains, and just accept, alright, sometimes the real world is fucking vast and open and barren and boring, and that's kind of the immersion there, and that's the experience, and you know, that feeling of, like, look at, okay, No Man's Sky, right, people are talking about for a billion different reasons right now, okay, I don't want to talk about No Man's Sky for any of its release failings or any of that, alright, I want to talk about No Man's Sky for one of the reasons people were excited about the game, and I don't want to drag it down with, oh, it's supposed to have co-op and it's not, blah, 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 blah. One of the, whether these people were wrong in their expectation or not, okay? What's important is that there were consumers out there excited by something, and that was this, okay? When it came to No Man's Sky, a shit ton of people bought that game and were excited about that game because they were thrilled by the concept of a massive, open, barren, largely empty world where your impact on the world could be felt by others weeks in the future, and a world where there was a very slim chance you'd eventually run into someone, and you knew it would be hype if you met someone. You knew that there would be this really incredible, powerful connection you'd find to this other lonely wanderer, right? Whether people were right to expect that of No Man's Sky or not, right? And whether No Man's Sky delivered on that or not, the point is people were excited about that as a concept. And that's what I'm excited about too. I'm excited about that as a concept, and I feel like there have been single-player games, and Journey specifically has came closer than any other game, in my opinion, to realizing that. And I feel like that can work on an MMO scale. And so with that in mind, I've always said ArenaNet shouldn't be scared to have big open maps and stuff. All of that said, though, you have to look at what Guild Wars 2 is, the product that we're playing today, the expectations of the players today. Everything I said on this stream already, and you know what, maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's a complete mismatch and a terrible idea for Guild Wars 2, right? Unless, like, they made it really clear on the expansion that, you know, there was going to be a huge amount of explorable space, but the expansion was going to offer a bunch more classic Guild Wars 2 core gameplay as well at the same time. Maybe it's just too difficult, maybe it's outside of the scope of what ArenaNet should be looking at doing, right? I agree. It's just all done better. What, you think the Heart of Thorns maps are just all done better? So, you know, if you look at something like Straits of Devastation and you take contemporary design from ArenaNet, right? If they were dropping this in the game today, that meta event would be 1 billion times better. Alright, I don't think anyone can deny that. That meta event would be so... They've got more tech straight away, but they have more experience, right? And they would know that this would be put on a fucking timer, right? This wouldn't be this thing that sort of triggers at all times. They would have it once every 2 hours, 3 hours, however difficult they want to tune it. It triggers, and the whole map would fill up with people here, similar to Dragon Stand, and you'd have 3 pushes going on at once. And they'd have all their own little things going on, eventually it culminating in the Temple of Balthazar. This, right here, this is the alpha of Dragon Stand. And if they made it today, then, yeah, they'd take Dragon Stand ideas and put it in there. And, you know, what do you guys prefer? Oh, that's a hard question, though, because there are problems with Dragon Stand, like the length of it, and the way the rewards were originally doled out and stuff. But in terms of feeling like with, especially... that first time playing it, right, where you're playing with hundreds of other people and you really feel like you all come together to beat this epic foe, which map delivers that experience better? Straights? No. Dragon Standard, I think. Straights has qualities, though, that Dragon Stand doesn't. Dragon Stand is, at the end of the day, still a... Alright, since people figured out the technique, alright, so maybe in the first few days it wasn't quite this, but since people have figured out the technique, Dragon Stand is like... oh, just wait till I get my loot. There's no real risk of failure, like there can be, but it's frustrating as balls, right? The way that the failure is set up in that map is just frustrating and really irritating and stuff. The failure when you look at launch straights, when Balthazar was originally balanced to be this badass, challenging, scary nemesis that you rarely saw die. I mean, that was an exciting damn experience, right? More exciting than I ever felt for Dragon Stand. Hey WP, what do you think of subscription-based MMOs? I don't think they're necessary at all, and I don't think that there is actually an example of a decent, in terms of business model, subscription-based MMO out there. There's no company out there, as far as I understand, that's actually made a good product that hasn't double, triple, quadruple dipped. As in, oh, we're gonna have a sub fee, and we're gonna have a box price, and we're gonna have in-game microtransactions. And we're going to have... what was that other thing? There's another thing they can do to just charge... and we're going to have in-game gold to buying gold, blah, 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 right? Like, what was it? There's a game that started doing that recently. Another online game that people really said about. You know, I feel like it's just... I do not feel like sub fees are there out of a necessity. I do not feel like Guild Wars 2's failings are failings because of a lack of a sub fee either. I think if this game had a sub fee, its development would have more or less gone along in a very similar way. Maybe that's optimism from me. Maybe it's more fun to be the cynical douche on the internet. But and I'm not saying that it wouldn't have been better, that they couldn't have hired more people and stuff. But I also have no idea how much of that extra money would have just gone into NCSoft's pockets or been filtered out weirdly or blah, 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 blah. I don't know. That's a whole element of discussion that I don't really know going down. Oh, was it BD? Well, I know BDO supposedly went pay to win recently, but there was another MMO as well that just started charging for another thing. I'm happy that this game is buy to play, and I continue to be happy that it's buy to play. Oh, was it ESO? ESO, yeah, I think it was ESO. Added like another money gouging thing recently, and now they've got like just loads of it in the game, even though they still have. Yeah, ESO's got like one of these weird things where you can pay in a game or something. I don't know. But yeah, today's event, guys, was really interesting. It was really, really interesting. I really appreciate everybody who turned up. It was certainly very nostalgic for me, which is crazy to think about. You know, the fact that I can consistently play this game for so many years and then do just a different area of it and feel nostalgic kind of shows you how different that area of the game feels. There are about 1 million things I would love to see happen to Corteria and to change about Corteria and to change about early leveling that I, honest to God, feel like would contribute to so much higher levels of player retention, gossip about Guild Wars 2, help it build. The one thing that I hate about Guild Wars 2 right now is that its core experience is as weak as I consider it to be. And what it does is it undermines everything ArenaNet ever does in the future, right? Like, everything. It undermines all their Heart of Thorns content. It undermines all the Living World Season 3 content, any raid that they put out, any future expansion, because they're building all this awesome stuff on top of just like a shaky, shitty foundation. You know, World of Warcraft did Cataclysm and rebuilt their core experience around the same time in their lifetime as Guild Wars 2 now has existed for? That's a mind blow for me. A crazy mind blow. It would be like due like next year or so. I feel like ArenaNet are just like resting on these apparent laurels, and I don't think they're here. I hate the community response to Feature Pack 2. I'm not saying Feature Pack 2 was perfect. I'm not saying it got everything right, because it certainly didn't. And there's a lot of really, really nonsensical, dumb stuff they put in Feature Pack 2. Don't get me wrong. Feature Pack 2 was mishandled. Like, the actual stuff that they did with it was... Some of it's just unbelievably stupid and unbelievably out of place. And I can't believe that somebody got paid to do some of that shit. Like, really? I have no idea... Like... There's no logical foundation to some of the changes they made in Feature Pack 2. It was that bad. And some of the stuff that you could maybe comprehend what they were going for, even if it was, like, in your opinion, associated with a business practice you weren't happy with, still went through, like, so buggy and just, I don't, but regardless, I hate that Feature Pack 2 went the way it did and that it got the community response it did, because I feel like it's like kicking a dog until it believes it's done something wrong, right? Like, whoever was behind the idea of, hey, let's make the leveling better, hey, let's take a look at these first few hours that everybody plays and improve these, let's try and improve our player retention. Whoever sat in that first meeting and identified that these were issues is a fucking genius. But I feel like that genius, who is the dog that's been kicked so much, they now believe they've done something wrong and that they're never going to go back, right? Oh no, Feature Pack 2 went badly, we can't possibly ever go return to Corteria. But it's so important to me. You know, this game is still relying on map completion for its, like, 85% of all of its meaningful content. Ugh. And do you know what the other 15% is? Fucking personal story. Jesus Christ. What do you mean Feature Pack 2? Oh, like, what do you mean in Feature Pack 2? Well, okay, so here's one that got a lot of hate, alright? And obviously it's my mind because of the event we just ran. They changed the hearts, right, in the first maps to be absolutely brain dead, right? Like, what this heart used to be was a vaguely interesting thing that many in the community at the time, maybe they were just salty trying to prove a point and it wasn't really as important as they were making out, but many people were like, oh, the reason I fell in love with Guild Wars was because the quest thing felt so different. You used to, like, have to pick up a feed bag, then you'd take it to a cow, and you'd press F and the cow would eat it, it'd like it, it'd give you a little blip, right? These days, you just press F at the cow and you dance. There you go. So they, like, cut it down. There's another thing that they changed on this one as well, and that's you used to have to get water from the well, and then you'd get a new skill, and you'd look at your new skill because you're a new player and you're learning about environmental weapons and bundles and stuff. You got the new skill, and then you come over, and then you'd use the new skill on the plants, and it would make the plants grow. Now you just run over and press F, and you have a magic green thumb that just grows them. They did stuff like making it impossible to die in the home instance area. They messed some reasonable concepts up. Like, you used to just unlock skills from using the weapons, and then they changed it to, which meant that you sort of gradually got them. Then they changed it to a system where they were all bound to levels to try and make the levels feel more rewarding. And just some of this is, like, very hit and miss. Sometimes you can speculate, right? Like, so this is not what I'd consider... They're changed to this here, this event, this heart quest. This is not what I would consider a complete lack of logical foundation. And I think the reason they did this is lost on most people. So why did they make it so you could dance to the cows, guys? Why did they make it so that you could press F to heal the plants instead of using the bucket? Why did they do that? And I will not accept as your answer that they thought people were too stupid, okay? Because that was always bullshit, in my opinion. There might have been a tiny weeny little bit of that in there, right? Tiny weeny little bit of that in there. But when Feature Pack 2 came out, all that anyone could whine about was, oh, ArenaNet just don't understand. ArenaNet think that everyone's like a Neanderthal. ArenaNet thinks that people are really stupid. ArenaNet thinks that we're all dipshits. Blah 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 blah. Such that we couldn't grasp this basic concept of picking up this feed bag and then feeding a cow. So obviously they needed to change it. That's all anyone could talk about Feature Pack 2. But actually, I don't think that's the reason they did this. I'm asking you guys now in chat, speculate, why did they make that change if it wasn't because they had no respect for their audience's intelligence? Because, you know, the cynical route is, oh, they tried to make it so easy that 6-year-olds, this was what it was, 6-year-olds, right? I think I may have even said this in a video at some point, that a 6-year-old could play, right? And the other end of the spectrum as well, right? Like, I now feel a little bit more confident that my 40-year-old mother could play this game. Sorry, my 50-year-old mother could play this game and pick it up a little bit quicker. And there's actually another nuance to it that I do understand, and I think I know why they may have made this change. Faster leveling? No. But faster leveling should never be important for the developer, in my opinion. Making leveling fun should be what's important for the developer. Allowing people to speed through the game to the point where they know that most of them are going to quit because they have no comfortable transition into endgame systems should never be on their priority list. And that's why I hate the way that they handle the anniversary mails, putting us immediately to level 40 and stuff. I hate the thought of someone who quit at launch, comes back, sees that they get a level 40 scroll, instantly pops it. All they're doing is expediting the moment that people leave the game. What the dev should be focusing on is making leveling a fun mechanic and a rewarding part of the experience, rather than just this obnoxious, oh, here where you go feeling thing. Because you never pick up rocks around the world. The cow food gave speed, which made key farming easier. That's interesting, and I do think there might have been a tiny part of that, but they nerfed key farming in their own way. And this treatment happened everywhere, right? It wasn't just Queensdale. It happened in all the starter zones to greater or lesser extent. A lot of it was simplified. What else are people saying? It would help if people had to talk to someone before they did quests. You can call the heart quests. It's just a random activity. Yeah, I agree with that as well. I always thought you should activate a heart quest by speaking to an NPC first. But again, they were trying to streamline. I don't know. And they got some people... Again, like, some members of the community applauded them for those kinds of ideas. But I feel like all of that stuff was short-sighted way back at launch. They never expect to improve other hearts. They never got to improving them. Oh, Mithrin might have got it. Sort of. We all know how to use bundles, but a new player would not know how to do that. So they start with the first half by press F to interact, but they never got to improve other heart expanding mechanics. Right, I think you're pretty close. In my opinion, okay, what they were trying to do with Feature Pack 2 is this, okay? They realized that what Guild Wars 2 did, right, was it bombed you. It exploded you at the start with all these fanciful and exciting and wonderful things, right? Like, there are all these great moments and interesting nuanced mechanics and stuff that you basically get the complete experience in Queensdale, right? There are a couple of things you don't experience in the starter maps, but it throws it all at you straight away. And what I believe they did to simplify this, it was not just to allow people to get a quicker grasp of the game, but I think one of the fundamental reasons for this was because now that you don't get the experience of picking up the bag and feeding the cow here, you do get that moment when you're level 25 and you do it. This is just completely out of my ass, right? But when you're level 25 and you do it at the heart quest at Overlord's Great Camp, right? Like, the point is that you pad out the nuances and the little mechanics and the little, oh, that's cool moments to be through more of the leveling curve than just the first 10 levels, all right? Because what that means is you're still getting these little, oh, that's cool moments when you're here, because you never had it when you're here. When what happened at launch was this: everybody basically saw the entire depth and width of content in their starting maps, and then when they went to Kessex Hills, the amount of new stuff they found was like pretty low. Like, most of the hearts were just direct copies and very slight tweaks and very slight iterations of everything they'd already done. And it goes for the events and stuff too. But now you've got, like, now it feels like the events are the hearts are getting a little bit more complicated. And then the idea is they get a little bit more complicated. And they get, as a good RPG should do. And, you know, each new map, and as you continue to climb, it's still a treat and it's still exciting you. It's still showing you these new things. And that's, you know, to say that on paper is very good. And that's the way the game should be. And I think that's probably one of the motivators for simplifying this stuff. You simplify this stuff so that this stuff doesn't just feel like a copy of it anymore. It's got some value of its own. Of course, it doesn't do enough, right? Like, it's all short-sighted, and it was foolish, because doing that, the improvement you're going to offer players for that is so minor, right? Like, so what, you've delayed it for a tiny little period of time. You still have to face factoring in that. You basically add the same copy-paste everywhere in all the maps for all the hearts across the entire damn game. There are a couple of interesting ones, right? Like, there are a few interesting ones in DSA, like, I don't know, even the gardening one I wouldn't say is that interesting. But stuff like the one with the cows here, right? Where you've got the cool little mini-game thing you can play, and you've got the emotes that you can do to the cows. You've got in Blood Tide the cool little swamp one. But do you notice how when they actually do the interesting ones, players eventually get to the point where they're not looking for it anymore? They just want to grind through them. And now that they have to engage their brain to do... So I'll go to where I mean. This one here, sorry, it's to the south. So this is a good example of a heart, right? Like, this is a heart that presents its own experience that you don't really experience anywhere else in the game, that was pretty bespoke, that you know, for the players who are still looking to find that joy in the game, can really get a lot of meaning out of. But the thing is, it comes so late in Guild Wars 2 that by the time people are here, it's like they've got cabin fever. It's like they've been indoctrinated. It's like they've realized the only thing they care about, the only thing that the games encourage them to care about now that by the time they're at Bloodtide Coast, is map completion. And so they don't care about the individual hearts anymore. They don't care about that stuff. They want the map completion for the experience, for the mats, and then they want to fuck off, right? So then they get to the heart, and they're not looking to explore anymore. They're not looking to engage their brain. They're not looking to speak to NPCs and to learn some cool new little thing. They're looking to get this little thing on the checklist ticked. And so you find a lot of players end up hating this event, but it's a cool heart. This is a cool heart. You go around, you learn all these different combinations of different toxins and things. You try them out on this spider. There's multiple different things that can happen. It can change color. It can go giant and attack you. I think you can die. There's like, this is a cool, involved little heart, right? This is what all the hearts should have been. If every single heart up until this one here was of the same vein, you know, its own little quest, adventure, story place, this would not feel like an outlier, and it would not be something that many people say they hate. You know, like, try it in chat. Let's see. If you hate this heart, give me a 1 in chat. I won't judge you or whatever, because it's just psychology, right? It's just the point you're at. By the time you get to... If you're map complete in Bloodtide Coast, and you get here, type a 1 if this frustrates the shit out of you. And you're like, for fuck's sake, I gotta do this. I gotta remember it now. Alright, what was it I had to do? Honestly, I'd put a 1 in chat. I don't like this. It annoys me. But the experience itself is good, and what Guild Wars 2 should be built on. Alright, and so that's like one of the big problems. It's like push this weird thing in the game. Look at that. Look at that flood. What did someone say before all the ones came in? What kind of sweet effects am I running? I'm running a reshade preset. Look out for it in a video on the channel soon. 1 or 2. It's frustrating, but it's interesting, right? Like, you know, that's not to say this is not immune to criticism. Of course, maybe it is a little bit too much and so on. I feel like I'm just sort of baselessly ranting here. I don't really know what my end game is. I'm just talking. I'm not sure what... This is not an argument that I've constructed. Let me just be clear. This is the difference between the streams and the videos. This is just a stream of consciousness. Someone else can make meaning out of it. There you go. There were a lot of 1s. What does that mean? I don't even know. It's interesting, but only the first time. Afterwards, it's annoying. Yeah, and that's a whole other discussion as well. These things are okay the first time. What's my opinion on ArenaNet giving less AP lately for new added achievements compared to old ones with a complete disregard of time investment and difficulty? Well, I feel like it's kind of a necessary evil. I don't think the mistake is today. I think the mistake was yesterday with that. And what do I mean by that? I mean, they were giving out too much AP before. You know, they've realized, right, like they've developed all this stuff, right? Like you've got the Zenith weapons. I just got my last one. Then the Pinnacle one's coming up. Check them out. And then you got the Hellfire and the Radiant stuff. And then it ends with the Hellfire and the Radiant backpack. I think in a couple of months, people will finally have got the backpacks. And that's it. There you go. 4 years, people have got it. And then ArenaNet have to make more. So the slower they give us AP, really from their perspective, the better. Because the slower they give us AP, the longer they buy themselves before they have to create more assets to feed into the achievement point system, to keep it afloat, kind of thing. So yeah, I think they gave out too much AP. It wasn't. It was too much, and they realised it, and they had to change it. They had to give out less. So these days you get less, and that's left us in the very unfortunate position where veteran players, people like me who did the original Blood and Madness or whatever the balls, I don't know, Origin. Like I didn't even get all of these as I went through. I did pretty good on a lot of these. Yeah, like Battle for Lion's Arch, right? Like half this stuff is like, it was just like nothing. Oh, here's another 5 AP, here's another. We're in the unfortunate position where all these are offering too much, and people are sitting on nice, healthy, extra bumps. And that is big, by the way. I do think that's big, because that disincentivizes pretty much all the new people coming into the game to really try on the leaderboards. Obviously, daily and monthly roll into that issue too. And I think that sucks, because these people should look at it and they should feel like they can actually participate. That's why I like the idea of doing PvE leagues, where they do that beta technology to give us a fresh account, to give everyone a new fresh start. But that's a discussion for another day. Maybe this unfortunate position can be resolved one day when they add Living World Season 1 back in. And what they do is people who already have some of these achievements from the first time Living World Season 1 was up, they can't double up, they can't get them again. And that lets people play catch up. End game. Why is Guild Wars 2 not like Guild Wars 1? Because Guild Wars 1 had Guild Wars 1 was a completely different game. But Guild Wars 1 also had no end game, really. Compared to Guild Wars 2, please. Guild Wars 1 really had very little end game. Let's take off the nostalgia goggles for a second. You might look fondly back at your days of running Underworld and think, oh, I used to do that all the time. You probably played the game for like a year or two tops, doing those same instances over and over and over again, and there really wasn't that much variety. Guild Wars 2's already existed a really long time, and it would not have sustained on that little end game. If you're asking me more, why haven't they put Underworld and Fissure of Woe and stuff back in? I don't know. I hope they do one day. I think it's just more about the story precedent. 30k AP and 15k is from dailies monthlies. Seems like a lot is from dailies monthlies. Yeah, I mean, if I could take them back in time and stuff, I would plead them never to put AP onto dailies and monthlies, personally. The 2 gold is enough now that they finally settled into that. People can catch up. They can catch. It's not that you can never catch up. It's just no reasonable human being on planet Earth is going to pick up Guild Wars 2, a 4-year-old MMO, and say to themselves, do the math in their head and say, yeah, I'll play a 4-year-long game to catch up, right? Like, no one's going to do that. They're not going to do that. So, yeah, it's kind of like the achievement point leaderboards and achievement point running is really a system for the established players and no new ones, which, in my opinion, is always a bad thing. Well, not always a bad thing, just very often a bad thing. I was really refreshed the other day. As a slight different note, right? I often see when it comes to Guild Wars 2, people in the community always say, they always come out with this just kind of happy-go-lucky, like hippie, innocent, no real understanding of how things work, philosophy of, oh, it's always good to have more options. Always good to have more options. Like, you know, someone will be like, oh, should ArenaNet add this? Should this happen? Should this happen? Should this happen? And they're always just super carefree without ever engaging their brain. They'll just be like, oh, it's always good to have more options. I implore you guys, if you ever catch yourself saying something like that, please think for a second, all right? I was really refreshed the other, and I've always thought, oh, that's just too easy to say that, right? Like, it's always too easy. Well, I was really refreshed the other day because I was reading the Stellaris patch notes. I was thinking about playing Stellaris again. And, you know, the devs over there are working as best they can on that game to balance it and bring it up. And it's really not... I like the world we live in these days. You can just play these random little games and you'll see that there's all these updates going on. The truly dedicated, decent devs out there. They're putting these updates out. It's great. And I was really refreshed because in their patch notes, they were talking about expanding on something. The amount of galaxies you can have. And they open their little paragraph and they say, people often say to us that more is always good to have. And they just straight up said in their little post, we actually don't agree with this. We think this is stupid and that we don't agree with it. And so we generally don't do this. However, for galaxies, we feel like it works. So we're going to put in a lot more galaxies for you guys. And I was really refreshed seeing a dev just straight up being like, we don't agree with that. This is our philosophy. We don't agree with it. Go away. If you know, like, I thought it was cool. it would be a bit of a breath of fresh air when and if we see ArenaNet do stuff like that too. You know, maybe all my ideas is like, look, we don't want Guild Wars 2 to be that. We want to make leveling faster. Like, I think that's such a stupid... Personally, I think it's so stupid to make leveling quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. Level 80 boost for buying the expansion. Skip half the game just for having an account for 4 years that you haven't touched. Hand out tomes of knowledge as like candy like they have with no regard for reining it in at any point. Sure, allow your players to filter through like wildfire and have your audience retention drop and drop and drop and drop and feel the sting of your gem store and your expansion sales go down with that. All to what? Foster a tiny bit of meaningless goodwill that's going to evaporate weeks after you've initially put the patch in with the community. Sure, do that, right? Like, that's really how I feel about all these tomes and things. I think it's stupid to do what they've been doing with regard to all of that. However, maybe they'll turn around and be like, no, we want the game to level really fast. Fuck it. There you go. Skip it all if you want. Yay! Right? Like, I don't know. I'm a real snob. For someone with no formal education in video game design, I'm a real fucking snob. Will you do more Stellaris videos or streams when you go back to it? I chose not to go back to it in the end. I wanted to play it with my girlfriend, but she wasn't too interested, so... and the videos I did with Matt basically had nothing to say because it was just me talk. And they were very dry videos, and so I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. I'm a fan of the game though, and I like it a lot. I think you put too much value on the leveling in an MMO. I put value on what an MMO's leveling could be. All right. That's what I put value on, alright? If leveling is a valuable mechanic in single-player RPGs for over 30 years now... 30 years? Is that hyperbole? Let's go 20 years. Let's go 20 years. Let's not go too crazy, right? If it's been a valuable mechanic in use for that long, I don't see the necessity to empower your audience to just skip it all the time. And it's kind of like junk foody... gaming world we live in right now, where it's just more, now. I don't think the answer is to let people skip it faster if it's not living up to it. And Guild Wars 2's leveling does not live up to it. Don't get me wrong, please. Remember what I said earlier. I do not like the leveling in Guild Wars 2. The actual leveling mechanic could be so much more. But, you know, what I think, that's what they should focus on. Not just, oh yeah, let them skip it. I disagree with you there. The quick leveling is only a problem for the people who have never played the game before. For veterans, the leveling process after 1 or 2 times will cause retention to drop much faster than quick leveling tome level 80 boost will. I agree with some kernel of what you're saying there. But if that is the only reason to do it, I still think that ArenaNet are mishandling it. Because the way that they currently handle these tomes and these scrolls and things out is they enable players who aren't even at that point to skip. Right? They're the new people who would get more meaning out of the first leveling experience. They're not getting it because they're still skipping through the stuff. They're still being encouraged. They're still being rained on with this stuff. And I don't believe the cutoff point, by the way, is after your one character, right? And that would be another point, right? If Guild Wars 2 is such a weak experience that you cannot level more than one character, you cannot go through a second time without being bored, okay? Then I would say you need to deal with why it's a weak experience, not band-aid it, right? Like, this is the equivalent of putting a band-aid over a gunshot wound. That's what they're doing and what they have been doing for a long time. I think Warframe got leveling half right. To level up, you have to complete a miniature fight that requires you to progressively understand the game better. Of course, to make these things available, you have to grind a lot. But the concept of personal understanding being tied to leveling is an interesting concept. Man, the redundancy hit me hard. What do you mean by that? 100% agree. I'm glad. WP, where do you think Guild Wars 2 is headed in terms of MMO popularity? Do you think it will go up in the ladder or down? Well, look, Guild Wars 2's got one thing going for it. That's that it does have some communities built into it right now. There are people here. There are definitely people, you know, one of the reasons why World of Warcraft, one of the biggest reasons why World of Warcraft continues to exist as it does, is not just because a Blizzard is still developing for it, but it's because there's a bed of community there, and there are memories that people have there, and there's nostalgia that people have there, and there's some assurance that you might meet old friends when you go back there and all that stuff. I actually believe Guild Wars 2, for every one of those things I've just said, I think Guild Wars 2 has all of those as well. So I think Guild Wars 2 can share a piece of that, like, everlasting MMO activity pie. I think it has hit that, and I think it's okay in that respect. Whether it will climb and become a big phenomena, I see potential for it. I think there would have to be development in areas of the game that there currently is no development, such as what we've been talking about today, for that to happen. But I do see potential for it. I am a little pessimistic, though, because I do sort of sit there knowing, right, like, there is no example of that ever having happened. Ever. For the MMO genre. Other genres, yes, we've actually seen, like, a really nice success story that I think of at the moment, by the way, is Smite. Smite is a really interesting product because it is definitely one where you saw it released, it got a bit of hype, and then it just sort of fell away into people's minds. And then it was just sort of bubbling there for a long while. It was just bubbling there. Not a very big community, just bubbling, just bubbling, just bubbling. But through the right development, the right support for the game from the developers, the right people in the community, the right content creators, the game blew up. It got bigger again, and sustainably got bigger again, and it sort of lived the dream. So I think it can happen in today's video gaming age. I think it can. Has it ever happened for an MMO? I don't think there's any example of it ever having happened for an MMO. I think a lot of people on the outside look at Guild Wars 2 as having just as high chances of getting big as a game like WildStar does. And that's a pretty hefty thing to say, by the way, because WildStar is low on the chain right now. Low on the chain. And someone just said Guild Wars 2 is better than WoW Legion right now. I can't go very deep with what I'm about to say, and you need to take it with a massive grain of salt, because I'm not a huge World of Warcraft player. I've played maybe 10 hours of it tops in my entire life, okay? But generally speaking, from my understanding of people I've talked to and what I've seen a little of myself firsthand, I would not be surprised or too offended by someone saying that Guild Wars 2 is the better game. I think it's just a consequence of the world we live in, that you can have a superior product and never get the accolades and the audience that you deserve just because someone else was there first. Right, that works in a lot of places. Right, like there's a lot of salt out there, a lot of insecurity out there. Like with content creation too, right? Oh, I'm doing better than what this guy's doing, but he's already got the audience, blah, blah, blah. You're sad about WildStar. You really love where they were going with it. Just wish it was more popular. Yeah, so the question, do I see Guild Wars 2 getting better? I see it sustaining. So much of this is based on the next expansion for me, right? Like, if the next expansion is, in terms of scope, anywhere near the size of Heart of Thorns, I'll be really disappointed. If it is Heart of Thorns, or God forbid, smaller in scope than Heart of Thorns, I'm out myself. You know, in that world, I really don't think that Guild Wars 2 is ever going to go anywhere. If that's what they're doing, it's pretty painful to say, but you know, they're not going to go anywhere if that's all that they can struggle to get out, right? Like Heart of Thorns each time. Like, you know, it could be very hard to understand where I'm coming from with Heart of Thorns out of a single quote from me, right? Heart of Thorns was amazing, right? The quality that was in there, the decisions they made about some of these systems, elite specializations mainly, some of the other shit flopped, honestly. But the guild halls and the guild side stuff, I think also was really successful with Heart of Thorns. There's a lot they did with Heart of Thorns. The quality of the storytelling, the quality of the writing, the quality of the graphics, right, and the maps and the art design and the environments. All of that was through the roof, right? Like, rewind the clock 5 years, okay, and show anyone, right, this map, right, the entrance to this map, flying into the entrance of the Auric Basin, and be like, oh yeah, this is just a part of Guild Wars. Look at this, right, compared to the little Maguma jungle we had before. This is some insanely high quality stuff here. This is better than the rest of the industry has ever done. Show me an MMO that gets something looking better than this, right? Honestly, like, I don't know, FF14 is a beautiful game, actually. in its own right, in a different kind of way. Like, this is top of the line. This is some serious stuff. This is a premium experience. But and I'll say that time and time again, Heart of Thorns was awesome, but it was not big enough. That is everything that is wrong with Heart of Thorns. Its size. Everything that's wrong with it. I'm going to use myself as an example here. And I probably shouldn't, because it's going to look big-headed. And, you know, whatever, right? But I want to talk about myself before Heart of Thorns came out. Just after the reveal of Heart of Thorns, okay? What you had then, alright, was you had a guy called Wooden Potatoes who'd been playing the Guild Wars franchise enthusiastically since Factions. And what this human being had done was he had played through all of the campaigns, he had very closely followed the development and beta cycles and stuff of Guild Wars 2. He had consistently played Guild Wars 2 since its release without ever having really long breaks from the game. He was in, you know, the top 99% of account wealth on Guild Wars 2 efficiency and had some of the higher achievement rungs and blah, blah, blah. You had a really dedicated player. You had a player who had built himself an audience of, at that time, about over 80,000 people online, specifically, not entirely, but mostly because of this game, right? What you had there, that Wooden Potatoes, was a guy that understood the product, right? And so, when he says, "Oh, I'd like the map to I'd like the expansion to have around 15 to 20 maps," which is what I said around that time, and it's hilariously wrong, and it's hilariously stupid in retrospect, and makes me look like a fucking moron, okay? But when I say that, there is something there, right? Like, that you can expect a few other people wanted more, right? And to then turn around and give people basically 3 maps, right? Worth of open world exploration, like proper open world exploration. That itself still wasn't like a lot of the core game. Obviously you're gonna have problems, right? Like, so I'm using myself as an example, and I could have been totally wrong, and I obviously was totally wrong, but maybe I was wrong to have that expectation anyway. But I think there is something in that, right? Like that we conceived of a world where that might have been possible once before, and now that just seems absolutely impossible to me before, right? Like, I get it. That comment was probably steeped in an incredible amount of ignorance, and maybe the devs are way too scared about adding that many maps because they don't want to spread people out. They don't have that much faith in the mega servers, and so on and so on and so on. I understand all of that, right? But, you know, it's just an example there of the earliest you know, when we hear we're getting a Guild Wars 2 expansion, right? That came with certain expectations that were, for many of us, that were woefully not met in terms of quantity. Cinema Coco points out something else, sort of vaguely related, talking about biomes, all that old talk of biomes. Yeah, I found that kind of funny the other day as well. I was doing a VB 3 days ago, I think. And it is funny. They talk so much about biomes for Heart of Thorns, and like the roots is like nothing. Like, you never go to the roots. It's like an achievement in the roots. There you go then. I don't think we will see true benefit of the systems in place, such as elite specs, until the next expansion. The problem is people will buy it based off of Heart of Thorns. I think it will mostly come down to Living Story and how much we'll get. Don't get me wrong, I love the quality of Heart of Thorns. The funny thing about Living Wild as well is, like, I think your average consumer is not adding one and one together and considering Bloodstone, Fen, and the Living World Season 3 stuff as the value of Heart of Thorns, right? I feel like they're not doing that. And I'm not, that's not a judgment I'm passing, it's an observation. Speaking of which, while we're talking, I may as well grab some of this. So someone said Guild Wars 2 as an MMO doesn't have a very big Twitch community. WoW had a Twitch community from the moment Twitch got popular. Well, I've heard that no MMOs really have very big Twitch communities. I would expect WoW to have the biggest. By a long way, of course. But, you know, like, look at what I used to do. I've been inconsistent with the streams and stuff, but you know, when I started, we had a lot more people watching on the streams, like loads. People were really interested, but then they realised, oh, hold on, Guild Wars is a pretty boring game to watch live, right? Like, your best hope in terms of a Twitch community is on the PvP side. And the reason for that isn't necessarily Guild Wars 2's fault. It's because it's a very personal game. The joy you get out of Guild Wars 2 is the joy of rewarding yourself with stuff. So when you when you only spectate someone getting these rewards, often all you can do is live vicariously. Instead, it's kind of different to, like, you know, watching someone play BioShock Infinite or whatever, right? People are in too deep. Sorry, it's like they took the 3 biomes and made 3 maps from them. VB is the canopy, AB is the middle, TD are the roots. That's an interesting perspective that I hadn't really thought of. That is kind of funny. You might be onto something there. Like, the quality is stunning. The quality is stunning. So I am fairly hopeful for Guild Wars 2's future, by the way, because, you know, they've hit their stride, in my opinion, now. Like, in terms of quality, right? The bar they've set for themselves, the bar they have proved they can reach, the bar that we experience with this Living World update, and with a lot of the Heart of Thorn stuff is really high, right? It's a really great experience, and so they don't have to do the discussion about how to get that bar there now, right? Like, they don't have to discuss what the bar is. They don't have to, you know, that stuff's in place now. So that saves them a lot of time, right? They've got the magic formula now. All they've got to do is produce it, right? That's kind of the point. Yeah, World of Warcraft's at 15,000 people right now, and what's Guild Wars 2 at? Probably not even 1K. I've had streams where I'm like 95% of all of Guild Wars 2's viewership just because I'm streaming, right? Like, we have no stream. We have very, very little. We've been pretty blessed on the PvP side for some really good PvP streamers in terms of consistency and activity. What happened to your Obsidian Sanctum jumping puzzle video with Mike from years ago? I really enjoyed your reaction to the puzzle, but I can't find it anywhere. It should be there. I didn't change it. Check the jumping puzzle playlist. Which also should still be there, right? I think I've got a jumping puzzle playlist. Unless that was from before I was making playlists. WoW is at nearly 50k, not 15. Yeah, very little machinima stuff doesn't help, but they did the /talk emote, finally.
Oh, what a pleasant surprise.
They did do that, which is very good. I'm not really interested in killing the Bloodstone Champion. How long is our uptime? Dude, this became a big discussion stream today. About an hour and a half. Well, guys, actually, to be honest with you, I got to you all really late today because the event took 4 hours. I will discuss with the Games Masters what's going on with the future events. It could be that we still do them, obviously. It just might be that I don't... My concept for that series might change. Just 4 hours playing Guild Wars 2... On a weird little concept like that is just not smart for me. I don't have that time in the day. I just don't. So we will we'll figure things out. But yeah, so thanks very much for watching, guys. Thanks for coming to the stream. Thanks for a chat. We were just talking about the small Twitch stream. Don't bugger off from the website entirely. Maybe stick about, see if someone else is on. Flood a newbies channel or something. In fact, I could do that, right? I'm just gonna host someone. If you guys want to hang out, I'll just bomb someone. We haven't done that for months. Let's see. Alright, we're going to do the lowest Guild Wars 2 streamer. Who's trying Thief Dagger Pistol in PvP, which I've been trying. A man after my own heart. Alright? So thanks very much for watching, guys. Hope you all enjoy. Been great. I'm going to have a read up through live stream chat again. Thanks so much to everybody who came. Thanks to Twicky for running the event. It was awesome. I highly encourage you guys to come to future ones. And until next time, I'll see you later, guys.